it's a different way of thinking about the economy and building nature and natural processes into it integrally. I am not going to take up his time because it's very valuable to have him here, but I do want to tell you that Gunter is in the middle of one of his amazing 52 weeks a year. And this week, in the last 6 days, he has been to Zurich, to Madrid, to Tokyo, and he was on his way just now to Mumbai, but we asked him to parachute in for the day. He's here literally for the next hour and a half. He has to leave for the airport at 1:30. And if he has any hesitation in his voice, it's because he hasn't slept for a long, long time. I went to pick him up at the airport last night, and we didn't get back till quite late. And then he was up this morning making sure that this presentation would work. We have a technical glitch. For those of you who are not in the room, we are not sure whether you will be seeing the full presentation. We've had to make some compromises, and presentation will be on the camera, not as a shared screen, and I hope that you will get the full flavor of it. It's a technology that hasn't managed to bridge the gap between Apple and PC, and so there is a bit of a problem here, which we are trying to solve. Ho jayega? You think it'll work? I think it'll work. Great. Well, thank you, Gunter. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you. Well, I've been missing you, Ashok, and I've been missing all of you. It was indeed a kind of an annual event to come by and spend a few days and visit some sites. And then it was decided differently. Anyway, I have continued traveling and working. I only had a 3-month lockdown when I arrived in Bogota for the birthday of my son, and 2 days later they closed the airport. And so then I had to find a way out. It took me 3 months to find a way out, but I found a way out even when the airport was closed. So this is part of the mentality, is the perseverance, because we're on a pathway that needs perseverance. Today, you know, you saw the last COP meeting. No discussion about getting rid of petroleum, no discussion. The big thing for many of the policymakers is to reintroduce nuclear power as the way forward to secure sustainability. So in 2009, I presented this in November to the General Assembly of the Club of Rome in Amsterdam. And basically my book, The Blue Economy, was presented a week later to the United Nations Environment Programme's Governing Council, where the concept of blue economy was launched in 2009 and was adopted by the United Nations in 2015. Basically, the book was not a theoretical review. The book was a summary of 100 projects, and it analyzed what is the logic and the driving force behind the success of several of these new business models. So Ashok, as you very rightly said, it's not about sustainability, it's about changing the business model. Because as long as we have a business model where competition is based on being the cheapest, we will never have sustainability, never. The only way that we have sustainability, is the main argument of the book, is that we have to change the business model to one where we are generating value, both material and non-material value. So we have to have multiple cash flows, multiple revenues, but resilience, quality of life, regeneration of the environment, all are part of the additional values. Now, I'm very proud to say that today the book is in 57 languages. Just last week, please, the clicker is not working. Change the screen. I'm sorry, you fixed it. We need to go to my presentation, please. So this is not working because you're on. So could I go place to my screen? Not your Zoom screen, my screen. Stop sharing. Sorry, Ashok. As I was afraid, it just blocked, and we have to restart. So I'm in 57 languages today, and just last week I presented to the edition in Slovenian. We're now in 8 million copies. And for a book on economics, this is quite good. There are very few books on economics usually economics, they force everyone to read it in English. We took a very different position. Every time we have a translation, every time I add a chapter for the local economy, as to show that this is not a book that needs to be translated as is, but this is a book that can actually be produced as a work that can be localized from the beginning on. Sorry, we have to do a little bit of parallel processing here. I'm sorry, we had a bit of a different view with our dear Trents here. And so I'm just going to do my presentation. No, sir, I'm in charge. That's what we did, because it was a mouthful for everyone to say zero emissions research and initiatives. And so we call it the blue economy. That aim of zero emissions I proposed in 1989. When I read the reports from the Club of Rome, when I knew that there was going to be climate change, I decided the standard had to be zero. And that standard was amazingly very quickly adopted in Japan. And a lot of people around the world inspired me in order to go on with this. And I think this is very important, that a whole team of people, and I think you know some of the people on the screen, and one I think is even sitting in the room. You know, what is very important is you need to be inspired by people to go on. And thanks to the Club of Rome and thanks to Elie Wiesel and others, I was able to reach out to a lot of real thought provokers. But the key was that in '89, I decided to go for zero emissions. And then in '92, I inaugurated the first zero emissions factory. So if I, as a 33-year-old, can decide I'm going to build a factory that's zero emissions, I do not know why there have to be now commitments in 2050 for net zero. I don't understand it. I did it in 3 years' time. I started from scratch. And all the knowledge and all the science that's available, why aren't you able to take 3 years or 5 years? We're in an emergency situation. And that was the reason this factory, that I went to the Rio conference in 1992, where I met Ashok for the first time, where I met Heitor Gurgolino de Souza, you know, where we succeeded in actually bringing to a lot of people the very simple mission. Zero emissions is not the final target, it's the standard with which we start now. That was 92. And this experience was very key. Of course, I'm not going to go through the factory itself, because I've talked about it here in this room and in your previous offices about it as well. But I went through a major crisis when I actually had no wastewater, no waste in the air, self-sufficient in energy in the factory. And yet I made one fundamental error, that I was relying on palm oil. I relied on palm oil, which meant I was responsible for the destruction of the rainforest and the habitat of orangutan. So I went looking for alternatives, and the best alternative I could find, right at the same time when in Europe, there was this rise in demand for fresh orange juice. I realized that from the peels of the oranges, you could make great detergents. My partner didn't accept it because the margins on palm oil were much better, and therefore I decided to get out. The philosophy of the blue economy can be really exemplified by these few glasses. You know, there is this traditional debate. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Wrong debate. That's exactly the wrong question, because the glass is always full with water and air. So if you're debating about the water, then excuse me, you're debating the wrong. And this to me is COP26 and COP27, COP28. They're discussing the wrong thing. They're not going to the core. And the core is the business model on the base of which we operate. And if you don't see the opportunities that you have with the air and the water, then you don't know what life is all about. So then we have this drama of the last particularly 5 years of greenwashing. I mean, we can't blame anyone for anything because nothing is said on this picture. But it is very clear that they want you to believe that this is made out of what? It's cardboard and it's recyclable. I mean, they're not lying to you. This is just a picture. But if I show you what it is really made of, then you realize this is nothing sustainable. The problem is this picture, you will have to dig in the internet to find it. The other one, you will find about 1 million more pictures of the one to the left than the one on the right. And this is not fake news. All the facts are on the internet, but the impression that is given is a pure lie. Although they didn't lie because they didn't say anything. And I think this is one of the greatest challenges we're facing. We're going against what I call the opium of the masses. I'm publishing in 2 weeks' time a new book called The Opium of the Masses. This is opium of the masses. This is making the masses believe that we're going to have all our drinks packaged in wonderful cardboard that is recyclable, but never recycled. And this is the challenge we're facing. There is so much fake around. So let me just remind you that our very first project was related to coffee, because very few people realized that in the market of coffee, 99.8% of the biomass is wasted. I mean, 99.8%. We had no Greenpeace campaign against coffee drinkers ever, but it's as bad as gold. I mean, can you imagine? And we then wonder, how come the farmers can't make a living? So fortunately, my daughter Chido, who has also been in India and been with you years ago, she started the whole initiative when she realized that actually on the waste of the coffee, you can farm mushrooms. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have 6,000 production units of mushrooms on coffee waste around the world. And people say, Gunter, that is great. No, it's not great. There should be 1 million. Can we imagine that with just the waste of the coffee, we can generate about 26 million tons of fresh protein around the world? 26 million, just with coffee. You add tea, you have another 20 million tons. And so if we're talking about hunger, then of course we have to realize that there's a very different perception around the world on how to approach it. When my daughter goes to a village in Africa, this is in Zimbabwe, when she goes in Zimbabwe to a village And she tells the women that on the coffee waste that they have on the farm, they can farm mushrooms. And in 2 weeks' time, they will have a harvest. You know what the women do? They get up, they sing, they dance, and they do it. If you say that to a European aid agency, they want a business plan, a strategy discussion, an analysis of the feasibility, expert advice. I mean, they kill it. It's the analysis paralysis dogma that we have today. Lots of analysis and no action. And so here comes my son. This is my son at the age of 3. He's now 13. And, you know, he's 13 now. Don't tell him there is hunger in the world. Don't tell him. Because he said, I found mushrooms on the coffee waste of my mom. And don't tell me that you can't do it everywhere with anything. And so there is a new generation that is realizing that the opportunities are vast, but somehow there's a decision that we just don't make use of these opportunities. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to get now to a conspiracy theory. It doesn't mean that there's an inertia, an ignorance that is very bothering. So therefore, I started writing a new series of books. I'm sorry, Ashok, I could only carry my fables for you this time. But you have the coffee solutions, the plastic solutions, the light solutions. I have started to write books about solutions in order to really popularize the fact that the new business model is not a good idea. It is being implemented. And that implementation, the last book that I'm publishing in a week's time, is about this. I'm sorry to show it to you. I know people are offended. I need to offend people because this product is an offense. This product is a pure offense. It is a maximum 2-hour use that will last for 2,000 years. There's a total mismatch of functionality and product design. Total mismatch. 10% of the forests today in the world are decimated to provide the fluff to absorb. I mean, can you imagine 10% of the forests are decimated? This is not a debate that is being held today. No one is debating how diapers are being a secret force in the massive destruction of rainforests. And how we have these green deserts whereby trees are growing, but they're absolute deserts. So my next book is called Diaper Solutions. And we worked for 10 years with Ayumi Matsuzaka in order to redesign the diaper and to actually expose how women's liberation has been exploited by these companies to provide a product which is a disgrace for humanity. Diapers have been used for 500 years, 600 years in Europe. They have been used by the Mayans for 2,000 years. We have the proof of it. But no one made a disaster as we made it today. Everyone was using the resource as a black soil, as the Vikings did it, as the Amazon cultures did it. So I'm looking always at this challenge to see the bad and the negative, but don't get disappointed and find the positive and move on with new business model. So the new business model, again, time doesn't allow me to go into much detail, but the new business model is that we can give all diapers for free and we will make money on the surprising thing that is that every baby produces so much poo and so much food waste that you can nurture 1,000 fruit trees with one baby's excess materials. One baby is 1,000 fruit trees. This is going to be an initiative that we have now demonstrated in Kreuzberg, in Berlin. We have the first communities doing it, and we are believing that India should never, ever permit any diaper on the market. It should be prohibited by law the way it is done now, because it is creating so much collateral damage. But then I come back to the farmers and the coffee. And I realize that there is a very famous person promoting a coffee brand. I'm not mentioning you the coffee brand. But the amazing thing is that how can we explain that one movie star earns more for the endorsement of one brand than all the farmers who supplied the coffee he promotes? How do we explain this? I mean, how do we explain a business model that is so rotten at its core that one person earns more than all the farmers combined? This is unacceptable. It's totally unacceptable. But is there any protests? Is there any objection? Is there any questioning? And if you question, paf, you're immediately attacked. And so therefore, we need to just look at the real projects. And one of the real projects I want to inform you, I briefly shared it with you, Ashok, yesterday, is mining. I mean, we know that without silver and without gold, no electronics and no medical systems work. So you like it, you don't like it, we have to do mining, because there is no electronics without gold. But is there a reason, therefore, to leave all the waste behind? Is there a reason to create asthma, to deliberately know that you're releasing uranium, which is a byproduct of gold in many mines? Why do we have to indiscriminately just release the uranium? Because it is less than the standard that has been suggested by governments and never enforced. Therefore, we needed to look at, this is a gold mine. This is a legal gold mine. If you want to see the illegal ones, they're worse. But this is a legal gold mine, and the processing is just highly polluting. And therefore, the question is, was 25 years ago, what do we do with this waste? And this waste is turned into paper. The initiative started exactly 24 years ago, Ashok. It's a long time. 24 years ago, there was the first piece of paper, a sheet of paper produced from stone dust. You crush the rocks, but the rocks are already crushed when you have gold. I mean, they have to crush it to 3 micron. To silver is the same. Many of the minerals as an ore needs to be crushed very fine. So we transform that dust into an extrusion process where we're using 80% dust from the mines and 20% plastic polymers that are recyclable forever. Because when you have a 100% mineral project, you can keep on recycling it. And the main application is corrugated cardboard. I mean, the Amazons with the home deliveries are creating a massive demand for cardboard. We have launched the corrugated cardboard from mining waste. China is already at 1 million tons. China is already at 1 million tons. And the Chinese Party, the People's Congress, has just decided a couple weeks ago that they will go for 25 million tons of paper made from rocks. Why? Because we don't use water. I mean, we decoupled, we have certainly heard a lot about decoupling, and we decoupled water from paper. Now, that is why China is interested, because their objective is not paper. Their objective is water must be more abundant, and they don't have water anymore. Like many countries have no water. So how do you justify using 6,000 tons of water for 1 ton of paper? Can't. And by having 25 million tons by 2033 manufactured from the waste of the mines, China is eliminating 6,000 multiplied by 25 million tons, which means that they're just saving another 3 Gorges Dam. Saving a 3 Gorges Dam by changing paper, which is now recyclable forever, and you don't cut a tree ever again. No, that's the kind of business models where you need a leadership to say, decided, China will do it. And today in China, we're already at 1 million tons. So we're not small anymore. 1 million tons is already produced. So the business model is proven. Plastics, we have to talk about plastics today. So, oops, what is this? Can you just, thank you very much. This is from our initiative. I've been chairman of the company now for 10 years, Ashok. We have gone from 1 factory to 5 factories. This is the cardoon, the thistle, the national flower of Scotland. This is a flower which is normally killed by glyphosates. This is a flower, though, that has an oil that is very similar to the oil from sunflowers. So we use the oil and we transform the oil with pressure and temperature to an acid. And then you have the sugar beets. And the sugar beets are giving you sugar, which is transformed to alcohol. When you have an alcohol and an acid, you make a monomer. And when you have monomers, you make polymers. We must demystify plastics. Plastics is not high-tech and complex chemistry. Plastics are very simple. It's an oil and a sugar, period. And you combine both, and you're producing a whole range of polymers, which have different functionalities. But the key is that we decided already at the founding of the company that we would only use old petrochemical facilities, only brownfields, no green fields. So this was the first project. This is Porto Torres in Sardinia, which was the first cracker, the first petroleum cracker in Europe in 1962. It had to be closed down because it didn't meet environmental regulations. Our company took over part of the facility and we transformed the cracker into a biorefinery. We're now doing 5 already. Our company passed a valuation of 1.5 billion Ashok. And we're 80% self-sufficient in energy. That means with the present energy crisis, it doesn't affect us because we have our own energy for 80%. This is a very big difference from what normally petrochemical industry, but what are we? We are 0.1% of the European market. We're market leader, but 0.1%. The market has clearly decided, the industry has clearly decided that they will increase plastics production. Threefold increase of plastic production and consumption, and therefore at least a threefold increase of plastics in the oceans and plastics as microplastics in the soil. I mean, the challenge is again the business model. I do not know how you can have a beautiful water from a wonderful mountain and put it into a plastic bottle, guaranteeing that you will have 7,000 nanoparticles of plastics in your body with each bottle. And why do we tolerate this? We tolerate it while, of course, we know, but we don't grasp the fact that glass bottles, glass is made of a mineral, of a material that is usable forever. You can't destroy glass. Glass can only be transformed. And one of the transformations is to turn glass into glass foam, which is a building material. Now, when the famous analysis funded by Coca-Cola came out that plastics are less damaging to the environment than glass, they of course did not include the hypothesis that you will reuse the glass as a building material. So if you choose the hypothesis that suits you, you prove whatever you want. But again, the marketing that went behind this study of Coca-Cola saying that plastics is better for the environment. No. Actually, it's not better. It's less bad for the environment. Is so false and still never debated. And anyone who would debate it would get hammered and would be accused. Fortunately, there is a country called Switzerland that decided to now make it obligatory to recycle all glass bottles into foam, glass foam. So Switzerland has now 3 factories of glass foam. And when you include the glass foam, you're a very competitive model. A competitive model particularly because you do something what the blue economy has asked from the beginning, multiple value. So you have a structural building material that it's 2% glass and 98% CO2. This house is a carbon capture. 98% is CO2. And the structure of the glass is, of course, the glass which was once sand. We cut out the sand from the horrible mining that we're doing, because after petroleum, it's sand that is the most traded and excavated material, destroying beaches and destroying rivers and lakes. And so, but as a building material, at the same time, it is an extraordinary insulation material. And the advantage is glass with CO2 doesn't burn. It never burns. European Union, after more than 20 years, has finally given it a go, and you can use it as a building material in Europe. I don't know why we needed 20 years, to be honest. Well, I do know why, because there were other industries that thought that this was a dangerous product to come on the market. But today it is permitted in Europe. It has now been permitted in Japan. A building material, 98% CO2, it doesn't burn, and it's a perfect insulation material. And it totally inviabilizes the use of plastics for bottling. I think this is the kind of new business logic we need. And it's hard financial arguments which cannot be debated. You know, since we're talking about water, again, the advantage is that there is no water used with any of the glass foam making. When you're making plastics, you still use a lot of water. I mean, this initiative of Sundrop Farms, you remember Ashok in South Australia, was one of those initiatives that has been building on 30 years of research on how to manage condensation. Because we always hear the statistics, 70% of the drinking water is used for agriculture. So it's 30 years ago, we had this reflection, this crazy reflection saying, well, why can't we have agriculture that produces water instead of agriculture that needs water? You see, you just change your basic hypothesis, because today everyone accepts you need irrigation, you need water for agriculture. And we said, no, we want to have a case demonstrating clearly that it is possible to produce drinking water while having agriculture. So we went to Port Augusta, where an initiative was promoted by the South Australian government, a kind of a government that sometimes is ready to take risks. I mean, they did the first battery system by Elon Musk, where they challenged Elon Musk that in 100 days you have the battery system installed and operational, and then we pay you double, or you install it, and if you're 1 day late, we don't pay anything. And of course, the character of Elon was that I'll take on the challenge, and he finished on day 98. But so this is a state government that's a bit different from the arch conservative government in Canberra over so many years. And so here is the very simple principle. We're close to the beach. We take water from 30 meters deep. We pump the water through a pipe system on the grounds, and we just send it back. And since water that gets warmer expands, once you have it pumping, it keeps on circulating on its own. No more pumps needed. And what happens when you have cold water running through a soil? It generates condensation. So this is a permanent production of condensation. It works all the time. This was the first initial test farm. And the success was so good that it was transformed into the farm, which today produces 5% of the tomatoes of Australia. It's totally self-sufficient in energy. And for each kilogram of tomatoes, 3 liters of drinking water is produced. No, Port Augusta, South Australia. So it's about 3 hours drive from Adelaide. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is changing the paradigm. This is not changing hypothesis. This is changing paradigm. Now, I remember in Rajasthan, the Swiss government funded massively the search for fresh water. And of course, they found fresh water. The only problem is that people pumped so much fresh water up that now it's brackish water, and they had to close them all up. No, close them up. When you look at the temperature, let's use the laws of physics. When you have the temperature of the water that is at least 15 degrees different from the temperature in the air, you generate dew, and you generate sufficient dew to have tomatoes to have strawberries, to farm whatever you want. This is development based on simple science. And I say very particularly simple science, but the difference is in terms of the water balance. Normally you need 210 liters of water for 1 kilogram of tomatoes. This farm makes a difference of 3 million tons of water per year. That means you have water for the town. Port Augusta, 17,000 people, has water again. No competition with food. It's the food that's producing the water. This is the way we have to think. This is out of the box, but this is working. You know, one of our latest initiatives that I think, Ashok, you don't know about yet, but this is about the tremendous forces in the water that are leading a few organisms to make incredible glues. You know, the industry 4.0, the assembly of a plane, the assembly of a car, the assembly of electronic material is not anymore with screws. Nuts and bolts are out. It's glued together. Now, what kind of a glue do you think they use? The gluing industry has gone in Europe from 8 billion, it will go to 80 billion. The glue industry will reach $500 billion in 10 years' time because it's substituting the welding and it's substituting the nuts and bolts. That means it will eliminate a lot of the robots as well. Can you imagine all these machinery with robots to weld things together? It's gone. They're glued together. And the gluing, therefore, must put us on track to find sustainable glues, because nearly all the glues used today are based on formaldehyde. Formaldehyde was prohibited. We had and gluing is much better than screwing them together. So therefore, I looked at the unique technique of the blue mussel. You know, this here, that glue is produced in 2 minutes' time. The blue mussel is able to extract a select series of protein from seawater. Then it selects vanadium and iron, and they keep it in 2 separate pockets. And when they find a place they want to live forever, because once they're there, they're not going to move, they produce in 2 minutes the glue that sticks them there for the rest of their life. And the moment that they die and detach, it's biodegradable in a matter of minutes. I mean, this is an amazing design. I mean, talking about intelligence, this is why I wrote a book 5 years ago, Let's Be as Intelligent as Nature. Because that intelligence, none of our engineers is able to do. Now, the beauty of it is they're harvesting vanadium from seawater with the iron, keep it in a pocket, and when they come to the right place, it's produced on the spot. I mean, there's no engineer who's been able to copy it, but we are focusing now with the glue industry in order to crack this logic. So this is a new research project, and we believe that within 2 years, with the right resources, we will know how to make glues that are much more performant than the ones we have today. I mean, this is the material harvested. It was actually already used by the Egyptians. I mean, the Egyptians were harvesting these, they called it a silk, a sea silk. But it is an incredible material that again somehow eluded our science. Another product from the sea that we have now advanced with, amazingly enough, Ashok, with the American military. I sometimes don't know why they are much more interested than others, but I don't know if you see this on the beaches in India, but this is the sand that has been expelled from underneath by a sea worm. A sea worm has, though, a very unique hemoglobin. Actually, the scientists believe that the hemoglobin of the sea worm is the first hemoglobin that was in the world. And that hemoglobin is able to absorb 40 times more oxygen into the hemoglobin than our body is able to do. And now the tests have been done. If you have an accident, if you have a shortage of oxygen to the brain, you are injected with this hemoglobin, which functions with any blood type, and you safeguard the functioning of your brain. You safeguard the vital organs by delivering oxygen with a hemoglobin from a sea worm. Now, 1 ton of sea worms provides 8 kilograms of hemoglobin. What do you do with the rest? Well, farming fishes, of course. Because today we farm fishes and we over harvest sardines in the oceans to feed the fishes. So this is another project that we have, and I think the logic, and I'm insisting on this, the logic is don't cut costs, generate value. The American Army has signed a contract with a French group and has offered to buy all production anytime. Because of course, they have now tested it and they have come to the conclusion that this hemoglobin from the sea worm works. Now, this is a very amazing new breakthrough that we call biomimicry. Now, this is an old project, Ashok, but I'm coming to the bread, which I think is of interest to you. I've always been wondering, how can we make food more nutritious? And how can we have more food with what we already have? So there is this amazing industry called beer. And the beer industry only extracts the starch. And everything else we were making bread from the waste of the brewery. And that was an easy one, but we could industrialize it in Germany. The interesting thing is that if you start looking at the whole mathematics, and I only show this not to go through it, but I'll share the presentation with you, Ashok. But what I want to show is that once you get into it, a spreadsheet doesn't help you at all. You can't do anything with spreadsheets when you're looking at these systems that are emerging, these new business models that are emerging. So in my organization, spreadsheets are forbidden. Can't use them. If you use them, take a holiday. I didn't say you're fired. That someone else says that. But you take a holiday, because what we need is the mathematical thinking. We need to figure out what is the multiplier effect that we can generate by having bread made from the waste of the beer. And then we start thinking through. But once you're on that path, you look at an avocado, and of course you see that the seed is probably as big as the flesh. So what do we do with the seed? Well, we know that every seed is actually a new life, a new tree. So it is enriched with all the nutrition that a new life requires in the first year or 2 years. And as a result, we have now, thanks to our Mexican initiative, the seeds of the mango are recovered, pressed out the oil, and then the rest is used as an additive to bread. So now you have the bread made from the waste of the brewery with a nutritional additive from the seeds of the avocado. And of course, when you're talking about avocados and you're talking about good bread, immediately afterwards people say, and what about the mangoes? Because they say the mangoes are the champions of the seeds. They have a huge seed. So yes, we have now succeeded in making bread, including the seed of the mango. We're increasing the nutritional value of the bread by a multiple, simply by adding the mango. The only thing that you have to secure is the size of the particles from the seed are the same size as the flour for the bread. So on the palate, no difference. But then the seeds is only one part of the mango. The other part is the skins. Now, the skin of a mango, what do you do with it? Do you keep it? Do you compost it? I mean, I'm saying composting is a wonderful idea, but can you make good money with it? And I think composting is not really considered to be a cash cow. But look at this. This is leather made from mango skin. I mean, I was discussing it this morning with Ashok. I don't know why India, the country of the mangoes, how come India doesn't have a leather industry? Aren't you vegetarians in general? Aren't you preferring something from a plant instead of something from an animal? Where are your mango leather industries? How come this is taking off in France? How come this is taking off? To respond to the Europeans' increasing demand for non-animal products. Look at this beautiful mango. You can make wallets out of it. It's soft, it's nice. Don't ask that it will survive for 100 years. But anyway, mangoes come every year by the millions of tons. So you can make new ones. You can be very good fast fashion. I mean, who's interested in fast fashion? Right? This is fast fashion. We can make leather jackets out of mango that will only last for 3 months. Well, that is even better than what the fast fashion of Zara and Hennes and Mauritz is proposing. So all of a sudden, mangoes become an incredible source. But guess what? The price for the leather of a mango is much more than you get for the mango. You know how much this is selling for in Europe? A little wallop like that? 65 euro. And you need 2 mangoes. Have you ever heard about if you have the opportunity to take the seeds of the mango and turn bakeries rich in nutrition, bombs of nutrition, and you can take the skin. I mean, couldn't we give all the mango flesh for free? I mean, couldn't we feed the world with mangoes? We can feed them for free and we only take the leather and the bread. This is the kind of thinking we need, and this is blue economy in practice. Now, we designed a whole system to have mangoes and to have it connected with fresh fruit. For bread, you have the ovens, but of course you have a lot of other activities. Once you get into this thinking at the local level, your mango becomes an engine of the economy. Well, this is how we need to think. Can the mangoes be the engine of the economy instead of just being the pleasure when it's in season? That's the kind of new thinking we required. I wrote a fable about this called The Magic Hat. Because we started with the beer, right? And all of a sudden we have leather and we have bread and we got mushrooms. I mean, this is like a magic hat. Well, nature is a magic hat. There's so much more to be gotten out than we're getting today. And that is what we enjoy. Ashok, do I have another 5 minutes?
We have a lot more.
But we will have some discussion afterwards, right? Yes, that's coming. That's coming. One of my great discoveries as a curious citizen of the world was that when I was told that the sperm whales have a language we now can decipher. Now, when I hear something like that, I have only one option: go there and experience it myself. So I learned how to do apnea diving. Because apparently when you have scuba dive and bottles on your back and you're breathing, then the sperm whales don't talk. They only talk when you're silent. And when you're making bubbles with your scuba diving, then, you know, they're bothered and they don't want to even talk. So I dipped into the water. This picture, I'm the proud photographer. When they're around and they're talking to each other, It's quite amazing. Of course, I don't speak sperm whaleese, so I needed afterwards some computer to tell me what they were saying. But it was quite amazing that actually the mother said to the auntie that take care of the baby, I'm going to go deep down. I mean, I just couldn't believe it when it was just played back on the computer. Then I learned that the sperm whales from the Indian Ocean have a different language than from the sperm whales in the Caribbean. They don't speak the same sperm whale. I mean, it's like human beings speaking French and the other ones do Spanish, you know, and they can't talk to each other. So apparently this was fascinating. So that brought me to this new world of interspecies communications. So I wrote a fable about that. Some of you may know I write children's stories. And so I presented it to the Chinese government. And of course, the government very generously immediately approved the fable for distribution to all the schools in China. I mean, that's 795,000 schools. And then I was asked to speak to the children. And when I spoke to the kids, I asked them, would you like to learn English to talk to your American friends? Or would you like to learn sperm whaleese to talk to the sperm whales? What do you think the kids say? Let me talk to the sperm whales. I mean, who cares about the Americans or English? And I think this is a great news about the next generation. We've had an overdose of communications amongst people through internet and all of that. We need to reconnect with nature. And reconnecting means learning their language. And that is an amazing one that I learned. Now, the whales are fantastic because, I mean, here you see how they're making bubble curtains to fish the krill. And they have this amazing capacity. So one of the things that we have been doing as crazy as we are is the apparatus you see here is from Jorge Reynolds, who you know, Ashok. He was one of the inventors of the pacemaker, and this machine is actually an electrocardiogram apparatus for whales. So this you attach to a whale so you can check his heartbeat. You see, and this is how close you get. You go in a little dinghy and then you attach it, and of course you fall in the water, and yeah, that's part of the game. You know, I think that too much of the science, we've taken the fun out of it. We're becoming too serious, way too serious. Do we need to be able to play, to risk something, to be adventurous, and we need also in the business modeling to become adventurous. And so one of the things I've learned from the whales is their incredible capacity to communicate in the water. I mean, a daddy whale can speak to the baby whale 3,000 kilometers away with ultrasound, and it doesn't create pollution. I mean, wow, 3,000 kilometers. How do we communicate in the water? Well, we have no clue how to communicate in the water. The moment you and I were in the water, we're lost. Because no satellite connection, no Wi-Fi, no cell phone, no radar system, nothing works anymore. I mean, we are at a Neanderthal phase on communications once we're in the water. Now, 70% of the world is water. Blue economy is 70% of the world is water. And we get in the water and we can't communicate anymore. And these animals, of course, they have learned how to do that. So I'm doing a lot of work today with Jorge Reynolds on seeing how we can change our attitude towards communication in the water. Now, here is a little device that we've made, and I've added it, Ashok, also for you to see some of the new things that we're doing during this COVID time. But this is the making of an electrocardiogram of a turtle egg. Now, why do we need to do that? You know, the challenge we're having is that during COVID, all turtle eggs were eaten along the Pacific. Tourism collapsed. The local communities had nothing to eat. There was no transport of food. The lockdown was so hard, so the only thing they could eat was the eggs of the turtles. For 3 years, we calculate 98% of all turtle eggs along the Pacific coast were eaten by people as a matter of survival. Shocking. What do we do? Nothing. We didn't even go to the news. I sent it to the BBC. I sent it to several, no reaction. No reaction whatsoever. The media is mute. IUCN, I informed them about it and said, well, we can't travel there now. You know, we're also in a confinement here in Switzerland. And so the non-reaction of the people kicked me in. I demonstrated you can go there anyway. It was a lie you couldn't go to Colombia. I went to Colombia, even with my 3 children. I went to the coast and we observed how we can start turtle nurseries. But then when you have so many eggs now, you need to figure out if they're really alive. So you have to take an electrocardiogram of the egg. So we learned how to make electrocardiograms. The amazing thing is that we have succeeded along the Colombian coast last year to save about 150,000 eggs. And it's very simple. You find the eggs, give me the eggs, 100 eggs, 3 chickens that will lay eggs. Well, what do you want? Once upon a time egg or a chicken that will lay eggs for the next few years? And people are smart. Give me the 3 chickens. And as a result, we're able for chicken against eggs, turtle eggs, we're able to recover the eggs. And then we checked if they're alive because a lot of effort is being done and you need to make certain. So we had the electrocardiograms done. It takes about less than a minute now to make an electrocardiogram of a turtle egg. And as a result, we have the little turtles nurtured, takes 3 months, and then we release them. And then we realize that when you've seen those movies where a lot of birds come by and they pick up the little turtles. Now the turtles cannot, and this is where I learned that drama, even with David Attenborough, is permitted. He shows how they run to the beach. Half an hour, and in the movie it's a bit boring to see them go back and forth, and many of them get picked up when they were pushed back by the sea. So they get to the sea, they get into the wave, and they're pushed all the way back and they have to start running again. Why has nature invented that? Because the beach is full of metal. It has magnetism in the beach. And by going back and forth during minimum 20 minutes, they're ingraining their GPS position of their birth in a couple cells in their head. Can you imagine? And if they don't do that, so if you're a good person, you save them and you put them into the water so they can swim immediately, they don't know where they were born. Now, do you agree if you have no idea where you were born? What is your emotional intelligence in life? Now, the incredible thing is that these turtles, when they've gone through that process, they come back 15 years later to exact the same position. And they don't read the stars, they read the angles. Now we know that they read the angle of light in order to determine their position on Earth when they're swimming across the Pacific. So they're taken by the current all the way to Japan and southern China. And then when they are maturing, they're swimming all the way back. It takes them a couple of years and they come back to exactly the same position. That magic is today endangered by microplastics. Microplastics is blocking the cells in the brain of the turtles. So anything we've done until now is endangered because somehow we've forgotten to measure plastics to the right size. Governments around the world are mandating the check for microplastics, but only to 300 micron. We find in the brain of the turtles the 3 nano size particles of plastics in the tissue. And that is changing life as we know it. So therefore, we have to have a war on plastics. We have to have a war on nanoplastics. The big pieces you can collect. The small pieces are difficult, but the nano size is what is changing life as we know it. the bottom of the sea with our boat. We did several tests already. We find plastics everywhere on the bottom. And one of the first strategies we did to stop plastics, the nanoplastics, is by using either seagrass or by using seaweeds along the coast. Why? Because several species of seagrasses and several species of seaweeds are adsorbing, AD, not AB. The microplastics stick to the surface. They don't get in. This is the beauty of the seaweeds and the seagrasses. They don't absorb it into their system. They make it stick on the outside. So as a result, if you want to have microplastic-free zones where you want your tiny turtles to finally get the first gulp of water in the ocean without all the microplastics, you need to create a space without the microplastics. And that is done thanks to the regeneration of either seagrass forests or seaweed forests. Now, we all know that seaweed and seagrasses are massive carbon sequesters. We know that they don't have to fight against gravity, and as a result, their productivity and growth is a multiple of what bamboo can do. The biomass generated by seaweeds, 25 meters deep, is double the amount bamboo can generate, double, and double the speed, because they don't fight against gravity. So to me, this is a very important issue. This is the seaweed farming site in Saldanha Bay in South Africa. We have started in South Africa to farm seaweed in order to create these blockages. And so you have these curtains of seaweed. And our tests show that if you have 7 rows of curtains, you block the particles of plastic from going through. Not everything, but you're going from 100 to about 5. Now, that is the first natural barrier we found. But then you are producing a lot of seaweed and seagrasses, and they get saturated with the plastics. Then you need to harvest these so the new one can grow through and absorb more of the plastics. No, I know this is a tiny drop into this huge onslaught of plastics, but we're creating spaces where life in the coastal zone can recover from this onslaught. And so what do you do with all the seaweeds? Well, you make gas out of it. Belgium is the first country that finally has accepted. It's only 61 kilometers of coast, but with 15% of the coast of Belgium, they can supply 20% of the gas consumed in the country. I mean, do we have an energy issue? No. We have a political issue that we want to depend on gas. And since we depended on gas, we now see the only solution in nuclear, proposed by, analyzed by the nuclear industry. But if we want gas, we start by regenerating the forests of seaweed. We harvest the seaweed and we generate biogas, which is 1/3 of the cost of the shale gas. 1/3. And this is calculated by Shell. I mean, would you suspect Shell to be a bit biased in favor of what? I mean, in Accenture. They're the ones who looked at the statistics. And the original research, Ashok, to my great surprise, was ordered by Mr. Trump when he was president. His research, funded by the president's office, you know, the president has these prerogatives to engage, that if the United States were to use the coast and the 12-mile zone of Washington state to farm seaweeds, the United States would be able to replace all shale gas with algae gas. So America is thinking strategically, and somehow no one communicates it. Or when it is communicated, no one reads it because it doesn't fit the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is one of the fascinating areas, and that brings me to my boat. This is my ship. She's called Porima. Porima has been under the radar for years. We believe in the philosophy that pour vivre heureux, il faut vivre caché. If you want to be happy, you better hide. When you're having a ship, Porima actually means, in Roman mythology, Porima means the goddess of the future. And in Roman times, she was considered the protector of the pregnant woman. I thought it was time we have a boat, because the boat in English, she's a she, you know, it's not an it. The boat is a she. Mind you, in German and in French, it's a he. I don't know how they got it so wrong. This time the Brits have it right. The boat actually operates, as you can see, on solar power, 550 square meters of solar. We have an excess power which we transform into hydrogen. Hydrogen made on the boat from seawater. I mean, why do we want to make hydrogen from anything else than from something that is abundant, like seawater? I mean, if there's something that we have in abundance, it's air and seawater. And so we produce hydrogen directly from seawater on our boat. And then we have a kite, which I show you in the little video. We have a kite that is allowing us to generate a massive amount of additional power. This is sailing off the coast of Oman. That's our robot. That's the kite. The kite has the same principles as an airplane wing. It flies because of the difference of the pressure. The kite goes up to 200 meters, 250 meters altitude. And the intelligence, the artificial intelligence, makes the system search for the best wind in the air. That means that the boat can keep on going straight, and it's the kite that's moving to the best wind. Totally different logic from what we have today. The sail is a fixed mast, and then you need to move the boat into, which is a lot of operation. Here, once the system finds the right wind gusts, it starts making the infinity. And this infinity is giving a traction that equals 10 knots. So a 40 square meter kite pulls a boat of 100 tons at 10 knots. And when that is happening, we invert the propellers of the engines, and from the work, from the drag, we're generating power. This is the future. Now, unfortunately, our boat had an accident in the front of Mumbai. We're caught into a storm, thrown on the beach. And the reason why I'm in India is on my way to Mumbai to see my boat for the first time since the accident. Couldn't get into India for a while. So we're going, we have 6 people, we're restoring. And one of the discussions I had with Ashok is that what I would like to secure is that we can train people in how to use all the technologies that we have. I mean, there's no university in the world that teaches you how to make hydrogen from seawater. No university teaches you how to use artificial intelligence and robotics to have wind power 24 hours a day. Not when there is wind, because there's always wind. The problem is if you're putting it on a fixed spot, then when the wind is up or down, then for you, there is no wind. But it's impossible to have no wind. There's always wind. You need to have the artificial intelligence to catch it. So what Ashok and I are discussing is that if we can repair the boat in India, then we could have a cooperation to create something that I call the Blue Campus. Can we work on the repair of the boat and teach the people who are interested to really be interested in the new energies to actually build them together? We've been doing it for years. This is the opportunity. We would like to see a couple hundred young people who can learn how to make hydrogen from seawater, as we have been doing it for 5 years, and as no university is teaching us. So all of that, I've been translating the last years in fables, and with that I will conclude. I have now written 324 fables and published 324. I have an amazing partner who I never made a proposal, but the partner said he wants it. And that is the Communist Party of China. Don't ask me why. The reality is that the Chinese government has decided to make all my fables available to all children in all schools in China. And the reason by now I do understand. First of all, it's positive thinking based on science. It's not critique because you don't like the reality. I mean, there are many things that I've mentioned to you. I don't like it. But if you stick to the critique and don't go one step further, you have no right to open up your mouth. You can think and meditate about it. When you open up your mouth, then it's because you will work together on solutions. And the solutions we have are solutions that work. Solutions that have a scientific base and, of course, have a lot of creative approach to it, changing the business models. So next year, I'm finishing a 30-year job, which is to write the 365 fables, which will be available in English as well. I hope they will be able to be translated in Tamil, in Hindi, and quite a few other languages. But our goal is to not teach children, is to inspire them. And it's not a long-term strategy, it's a very short-term strategy. I have 6 children, and I know that if I change my mind on something, it's most likely because my son is insisting that it is not what I think. And I probably have the greatest patience to listen to anyone if he's my son. And my daughter has also that capacity. What I think is key is 50% of my time I spend on getting these new projects going, getting these new business models developed. But the other 50% is education. We have to tackle education. Education is not preparing our children at all for a future full of challenges. It is telling them to be sheep and to follow instructions. And we've seen during the COVID that that's what people do, follow instructions. It's not what I do. And I would think that if we want to really get to sustainability, we need to go to a different level. Last slide from Las Gaviotas. I didn't talk about gaviotas because, again, we've talked about that several times before. Yes. In Las Gaviotas, there is this slogan: the maturity in life is realize your dreams. And now we're going to make a new mural, and we're going to paint in there: the maturity in life is going beyond your dreams. Thank you.
As usual, that's mind expanding in ways that we don't often get. Can you give me the previous slide? In addition to being adopted as a partner by President Xi of China, I should tell you that he has another partner, and maybe you should tell them who does the illustrations.
Well, very important is my wife, Katerina. She's doing all the illustrations. So it's a partner in disguise.
Good partners. And we are a partner of yours. We've done about 15 of these fables into Hindi. And of course, they're lying around. I don't know how many of you have read them, but they're very good. They are inspiring. And I would like to recommend that all of you help us do the rest. Gunter is a big-time publisher now, so he makes his living out of getting all these done. He writes these while sitting in airports and airplanes, because that's where he spends most of his time. So it's a good, very productive way of using one's time. Thank you for finding the few hours in Delhi that you're on your way to Bombay for. We would like very much that your boat becomes a part of our way of inspiring young people to become good engineers, holistic, systemic. And that's very, very important. And if any of you want to spend a little time on the boat, learn about blue hydrogen, about solar, about wind, we will try and see whether that's possible. You, I hope, will succeed in getting some business partners, which we're trying to work on. I've talked to Mr. Jamshed Godrej and hoping that he will see him tomorrow. And it would be very good for DA to be a part of that are you going to call it the Blue Campus?
Blue Campus.
The Blue Campus. That's where we
We're
want
allowed
to
to follow the university. We're a Swiss organization, and in order to call yourself a university, you have to meet some parameters which we don't do. We've been allowed to follow the campus.
That's good. It's a good name. Very good. Well, thank you, Gunter. Are there any questions or comments that any of you would like? Because this kind of inspirational insights into combining things that we never combine, take the example of the mangoes, are going to be terribly important, say, in our work in Chhattisgarh and other places. I mean, I think we can apply many of these things pretty soon. And Gunter has all the recipes. We certainly can use them. The bakery, the brewery, the mango skin, the mango seeds, these are all incredible ways of valorizing, of putting value into whatever we do. Who wants to talk? Yes, I can see that.
I actually wanted to ask you a question from a marketing and a consumer perspective. There is ample research that suggests there is an attitude and behavior gap when it comes to consumers. So even if they report feeling, I want to look after my planet, I want to look after my kids, their shopping behavior suggests otherwise. And they'd opt for something that's more affordable or trendy and fashionable. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on, how do we address that gap? If we can address it, what role should consumers play? How do we talk to them? What do we do about the demand side of the system?
You have to look at a consumer as if she or he is a little child. Don't take him as an intelligent, educated, conscious decision maker. It's a child. And if you take your consumer and you wake up the child in the consumer, because we have killed the child in every consumer. We want them to be rational. You want them to be calculating. We want them to be a child. And what does a child like? Surprise. So if you don't package your solution as a wonderful surprise, you are not going to get a behavioral change. And this is where the marketing gap is. We have so many great things that we could do with the Zaras and the Hennes and Mauritzes and the fast fashions that you name. But we are not able to package it in something that is, wow, I didn't know. And if you don't have the wow, I didn't know, surprise, I like, and at the same time have it available, you're losing. So we have not put essential marketing principles to getting the buy decision. This is one. Second, though, we need somewhere some regulation. I give you the example of the refrigerator. Now, it's quite amazing. The refrigerator the first refrigerator that came into our home when I was a child worked for 40 years. 40 years. One refrigerator. There's no refrigerator anymore that works for 40 years. Now, what we have forgotten is that when you're to buy a new refrigerator and you have a local one or you have one of those Samsungs, LGs, Electrolux's one, then these three will be at least 30% cheaper. Now, what is the choice? The choice, unfortunately, we're pushed into is to go for the cheapest. And the marketing is telling you go for the cheapest because you will have more purchasing power. It's a lie. You have more purchasing power short term on that day, but not over 25 years. That's where the difference is. And so we did the whole stuff with life cycle analysis, but we never did it for your purchasing power analysis. Because if I am doing a 25-year purchasing power analysis, I know that with these Electroluxes, LGs and Samsungs, I'm going to buy 3 over 25 years, each time the cheapest, but over 25 years, I'm paying more than with this one, with after-sales service. Now, that is where we're cheating again. The mindset of the immediate purchase without seeing the long term, that has to be regulated. Just like we're regulating that you have to purchase a car that is not using heavy diesel fuel. I mean, it seems to be normal that we do not permit any car maker in the world to use cheap, dirty diesel fuel. That we decide. But for the fridge, go for the cheapest. I don't get it. The same with television sets. I mean, the television sets, you look at all the big television sets being sold today because of the World Cup FIFA in Qatar, you will see that in the color code of energy, they're all red. They can only sell it now because this is the moment to get the big screen so that you can look at the soccer games on the big screen, but guzzling energy. You can have the other ones that will be in the green range, the yellow or the green range, but they're not being offered because they can't do it at the big screen. You can only do it on the low screen. So we're continuously being cheated on by these proposals to buy now the cheapest. Always like Persian carpets, you know. Persian carpets are always on sale. Have you noticed? I mean, there's never ever any Persian carpet that is not on sale. Now, we've done the same with everything else. You always get the feeling that, oh, it's on sale. This is the moment I must buy now. We have to start imposing the calculation over 25 years, your lifetime. I mean, we think it's normal. You calculate the purchase of a house over your mortgage, but whatever goes into the house is an immediate purchase for now. So I'm saying we need regulations, just along the lines of some other regulations that already exist. But if we don't have the surprise, then it's not going to work.
Thank you. And I don't know, I'm sort of spellbound. It was like a movie to me. I have a couple of questions. The first question, I don't know, it should be the first or last. How do you really manage time with all this you are doing together? I mean, it's a big, this thing. For
How I manage my time?
Yes.
Oh, you
So
have
many
great teams. I mean, it only works when you have wonderful teams. I mean, if it all were relying on me, I would be dead long time. You know, teamwork. Delegate to teamwork and trust your teams. That's how I manage my time, or try to.
Thank you.
And
Thank
have
you.
a very tolerant family. I must add, have a excessively tolerant family.
Great. And you are lucky that way, I would say. So there are a couple of things that I need to ask you about the glue that you said, and it's coming from the sea worm. And today, very limited number of people knows, and tomorrow, well, it will be known, and the industry will start. And then again, don't you think that will go back to the lot of distraction? Because that's what happened, in medicinal plant. In many cases, that's what happened is once we know, and the industry start a lot of distraction. So is there anything that you really think to kind of avoid that kind of distraction?
So, first of all, I think the model of asking nature to produce more is a wrong model. So it's not because you found the sea worm or you found the mussel that now you're going to produce more mussels and more sea worms. No, we have the intelligence to make synthetic analogs. I mean, we need to use the model from nature and make a synthetic analog. And the synthetic analog doesn't have to be made out of non-degradable plastics. You can make analogs from sugars or from lignin or from protein, but we need to come with our knowledge of DNA. We need to come to synthetic analogs, borrow the design principles from nature.
Yeah. And one last question regarding the education. You are already in advanced stage with China, and so my question is, why only China, and why not the other countries? Why not India? We know that India, that really, pulls up talents. So, and this kind of, just thinking, if we can imbibe from the children itself, India could really do wonder. So if you have any answer for that, and how can we really do it for India?
You decide it. I make available and you decide to do it. I cannot do it. I mean, this is again going back to your first question, the teams. If I try to do it in China, why did China choose me? I never even made a proposal to the Chinese, and they said, that's what we want. So I think it's very important. I will share open source through DA for India, and you do it. We've just launched in France. I brought the first series published in France, and a new company was created in France. I supported the entrepreneurs, and they launched the fables, and I'm very happy for them because they told me they're earning €1,000 a day selling the first 5 fables. €1,000 a day with 5 fables. I think that's very good. I mean, I told them if it's €1,000 a day, maybe I should go back to the job that you're doing because I'm not getting paid so well. So I think it's entrepreneurial. We have it today in France. We have it in Estonia. We have it in Colombia. We have it in China. So India, your decision. See, you don't see. That's analysis paralysis. See, this is where we have to come to the moment where the surprise is there that do it. Don't think, do it. This is how I operate. I'm not making analysis on glue. When they've told me in 3 minutes what the blue muscle is doing with glue, I'm saying, I do. I can't wait because we have no time to waste. I mean, don't forget that as well. We have no time. Any other question?
Thank you for this wonderful, presentation. So I had like 3 points. First, are these books available in form of some sort of resource, as in like e-book or maybe animated or something like that? Second, how do you identify the problems? Although the world is full of problems, but how do you identify the particular problem that needs a solution? And
Okay, let's take one by one. I don't look at problems. The problems have been analyzed by the Club of Rome since I know the Club of Rome for 50 years, and there's no solution to the problems. So looking at the problems is not going to get very far. We failed on that line. And I don't like people repeating the same problems that we knew already for 50 years. Actually, the nanoplastics problem was published for the first time in Science magazine in 1972. 1972, same year as the Club of Rome report, was a report published on problems of nanoplastics for life. So to me, it is very important not to think about the problems, but to create these portfolios of opportunities, because that's the switch in the mind that we need.
thank you. Third point I wanted to ask, our ancient resources are full of such alternate solutions, which probably over the time we've forgotten, different civilizations. So do your teams actually dig up that knowledge, or, do you also consider that?
Of course, the whole solution for the diapers is based on terra preta. And terra preta comes from the Amazon cultures, comes from the Vikings, comes from, so they've been practicing that for millennia. So yeah, very often you need to just rediscover what has already been discovered. The kite, you know, the function of the kite was invented by the Polynesians 8,000 years ago. Polynesians, they were never using the sail that the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians used, and which we still keep using. The Polynesians 8,000 years ago had already the ships that went straight instead of this crazy idea to zigzag against the wind. Who invented that? Well, these were people who didn't know about the Polynesians' invention because their ships 8,000 years ago were going straight. I mean, any of you is a sailor? Have you been on a sailboat? I mean, you see the energy going to zoop, zoop, zoop with a ship. What a waste of time. Go straight. Let the sail do that. Now, that is the kind of intelligence that in this case we borrow from the Polynesians.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
just wanted to know,
Yes.
are these ebooks available or
So
animation?
the ebooks, sorry, I jumped over too fast. In China, we decided not to do ebooks. Absolute no. You know, in China, when it's a no, it's a no. I mean, there's not no but. There's a no and there's a reason. Very often they don't communicate very clearly what the reason is. But this time, I was witness of the study that was done in China. Let me get a, can I just borrow a page from you? No, just as you, no, just as you have it. Look, if I'm looking at this, then my eyes go on the letters written here. I don't have glasses, so I can't read what you've written. Okay, don't worry about it. So my eye is going over here. If I'm standing here, I have different light than when I'm standing here. My eyes must adjust. Okay. Now, if I'm turning it and I'm looking at it like that, I'm folding it a little bit. My eyes again have to adjust. What is happening? My eyes have to deploy 1,000 times more neurons than when I have a Kindle and read it at the same 2D space, at the same light intensity, wherever I am, because an infrared is adjusting the screen all the time for me. So when the Chinese Academy of Sciences figured out that by reading a real book with real light, you activate 1,000 times more neurons, they said, no ebook. Wow, did you know? I mean, reading ebooks makes your brain lazy. 1,000 times more neurons. And when I asked them why 1,000, they said, but you go from 2D to 3D. And when you go from a 2D space into a 3D space, you need 1,000 times more activations to look at all the pixels. Now, of course, on a screen you have a pixel, but in real life, it's not reduced to a pixel. There is no pixel. The pixelation is non-existent because everything is continuous. So as a result, in China was decided that for the first 10 years, up till 15 years, all my books will be in print only. And I think this has a logic behind it that is quite pervasive. I mean, this is why we should be reading newspapers. Because the newspaper is actually a brain massage. It's an acupuncture of your neuron cells. You know, we're activating continuously because our eyes are made to do 3D. And then we're forcing everyone to look at 2D screens with the same light intensity to not stress our eyes. No. Our eyes must be stressed for the brain to be activated all the time. And so that, I think, was a very important finding. Thank you for reminding me. It's a very important point.
Sir, I have a question. First thing first, thank you so much for sparing your time for this session. It was quite inspiring. I'll pick your brain for some more inspiration. We talked about glass as a building material and we said that it's an example of carbon storage. Are there more such models available, especially for the landlocked states, that could be easily implemented in India?
So let me first of all tell you what not to do. Don't use plastics in construction. Plastics in construction is an off-gassing of unknown chemicals into the inner space that is endangering the livelihood, especially of the children. So no plastics to be used. It's been very popular in many occasions, highly promoted by the industry itself, but cannot be done for one simple reason, is that the industry worldwide has a license to add 1% to the plastics that it doesn't have to disclose. If you don't know what you have in there, you can't use it. There must be full disclosure of the brominated compounds for as fire retardants, the ultraviolet blockers. If you don't know what is in there, you can't recondition it inside. I rather go back to the ancient building materials that have proven throughout time. Of course, bamboo, number one. Bamboo is vegetable steel. We have to go back to bamboo as a vegetable steel, knowing how to conserve bamboo against the destruction from mites or ants that, of course, are after the lignin or after the cellulose. But a very important, the other one is straw. I mean, I do not understand how the industry, agricultural industry, is on a crusade to do the genetic modification of plants without straw. I mean, rice, strawless rice is being genetically modified and popularized because we do not know what to do with the straw. No. The great users of straw have been eliminated and have been blocked by the industry under the pretext that it's not modern and not good. So straw baling is definitely a construction technique that is highly needed in countries. And it doesn't mean that therefore you're prone for fire. It means that you have to have building techniques like combinations with the foam glass so that you create fire barriers. And foam glass is as much a fire barrier because nothing will burn through glass. Glass will not burn, period. So I think straw, bamboo, let's not forget that rammed earth is very important. I mean, your original headquarters and your building here, rammed earth is very important. And I think we have a whole series. The Centre Pompidou in Paris, they actually have their most successful exposition. The most successful one that went for 21 years was on the 5 traditional building materials as a tool for construction anywhere in the world. The idea that you can't go altitude is also wrong. You can build with bamboo without any difficulty to 10, 12 stories. But then you have to ask yourself the question, do you really want to go to 100 stories? I mean, isn't enough to do 10? So I would suggest the Centre Pompidou exhibition is a wonderful reference of the different building materials throughout time. Another reflection is, do we want to build for a generation or do we want to build for a century? It's interesting to see that German houses have an average of 141 years of life. The French ones have 90. What's the difference between the Germans and the French? I mean, how come one is 141 and the other one is just 90? I mean, in 50 years is a huge difference in material consumption. And does it therefore mean that they're less insulated and the other one is better insulated? No, that's another debate. So I think there are a lot of considerations. If we're thinking of building for 3 generations in one structure, you will use different building materials. And concrete and cement is automatically eliminated because they will never last for 3 generations.
Thank you so much. Sorry, a follow-up question to that. I'll expand the horizon and I'll put this context out of construction. In general, what are some good carbon sequestration models that can be adopted?
Well, I have always started from the premise that both the building and the use of the building has to be zero emissions from day one. So I'm not just starting to sequester, you know, my starting point is I never expended any. The major consumption of carbon, though, is in the use of the building and not building it. And in the use of the building, we have these tremendous reflections on light and on air. I wrote a chapter in my book, The Blue Economy, on designing with the flow. I suggest you read it. Because designing with the flow I'm actually describing all the flows that are already going through a building that allow you to capture on the flow, meaning that I can even generate power from it. I give you an example. We have done in Italy first buildings whereby when you have the compression points in this room, that's probably there in the corner, there is a compression point, okay? In that corner, when I'm connecting those beams as compression points, I can put some crystals in there and I can generate piezoelectric power for the whole room from the compression strength of the two beams meeting there. Now, that is an innovative design. It means I will have 24 hours of power in this room. The lights are always on solely with the piezoelectric power generated on the 4 beams in each corner. That's innovative design. Who here has worked with piezoelectricity? Nobody, I mean, very few people learn how to use it. Now, if I have an architect who can design it into a building, I can have light all the time without spending 1 penny on a cable. I don't even have to put the wire in there. Now, if I look at the costing of a wire and the carbon sequestration required, copper wires are probably one of your huge expenses after the concrete and cement. So I eliminate copper wiring because the communication of the cabling between the pressure points of the piezoelectricity and the light, I can do with a fiber optic and not with a copper. I can do power over fiber optics. And then I can use the same wire for my high-speed internet. And then I can do my transmission for internet not over radio waves, for which I need a router, for which I need, again, the cut wiring. I can just do it over my light. I will have a light-based internet transmission using the optical fibers behind, and the last 5 meters is done with light. You see, that's the kind of new thinking we need. And that's available for people who are very poor because they need light, right? I mean, they would need some light. And when we can have the most efficient 3rd generation LED lamps that are at the same time their internet connectivity, powered by piezoelectricity.
And, in his book, page 151, is a whole chapter on building designed by flows, which he referred to. So it's all there for us to read. But, you know, the purpose of inviting Gunter really was for us not to have him come and solve our problems, but to demonstrate that it is possible for each one of us to think through these things. So Geetika, you know, when you ask why not India, it's not his job. That's our job. And we should be asking the right kind of questions because it's China, because China took the trouble to ferret him out and forced him to deliver how many? 30 a year?
36 a year.
36 fables a year. And they didn't even offer him any money for it. But the point is that they were persuasive enough that they managed to do that. And we have.
Well, they offer 250 million children to read.
That's true.
No, that's, I mean, if you can have 250 million children read your books, then I'm running.
Well, we might be able to get up to 150 million. So we need to think that through. But the point is that Gunter's meaning for DA is to provoke us into thinking through what it is that we need to do and figuring out how to do that in a net positive way to actually make water out of growing vegetables rather than the other way around. So he's there. We talk regularly on Zoom, and anybody here can connect. We can have sessions with him, but for asking us questions rather than giving us answers. I think that's really his biggest value to us. Why don't you try piezoelectric? And indeed, we ought to. never gave enough thought to it. Do you want to ask the people online? We can't see them, but I think they can see us. Can you ask them?
Don't think your mic is working. If you know what's
Do we have any questions from the participants who have joined?
Yes, I am Dipanjana. I have joined from West Bengal. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, please.
Thank you so much for this. So this lecture simply expands the horizon. Within a span of about 1.5 hour time, about 30 ideas has been presented, and with not only in the form of idea, but which has been already in some form has been implemented. It's very inspiring, and I would like to know that even, I mean, as you have already said that you have a nice team with you, but what I find that even thinking is not so different, but realizing the thought into a scalable action, that I find always very challenging. And I would like to know from you, how can we, how you jump that barrier? How these all thoughts which are not so unconventional and so innovative, you transform into action.
So if I understand your question well, you're really looking for on how to accelerate and secure there is a bigger buy-in and more people are doing it. The role that I have assumed with our scientists and our entrepreneurs is to really, first of all, design the business model. Make certain that there is a business model that works. It's financially viable. It's competitively viable. There's no reason to fail at first sight. So that to me is very important. Second role that we're playing is to make certain that the first cases are implemented. So every single example that I mentioned today has been implemented somewhere. So you're not the guinea pig. You're not the rabbit in the laboratory, because it has been done somewhere. And some has been done quite a few times, like turning, coffee waste into mushrooms, or like turning rock waste from mines into paper. That has been done 5 times, like turning plant oil into bioplastics. So to me, it's very important that we deliver the proof of operation. So this is very different. Usually in entrepreneurship, people want the proof of concept. No. We deliver proof of operation. If people say, oh, you have a nice proof of concept to make hydrogen from seawater. No. We've been operating it in 4 oceans around the world. So it's a proof of operation. And so this to me is very important. Now, the next step, call it the massification, the acceleration, is not our responsibility. Is, as you were saying, Ashok, you hear, you do. And that is indeed why I reach out to a lot of young people around the world to say, hey guys, now don't make a business plan. Just get your hands wet, get your feet wet, do it. Because it's in the doing that we see the difference. And we see that the greatest hurdle that many young people face is that they don't have the self-confidence to do it. They're lacking the confidence. And therefore, all my fables have a special section on emotional intelligence, because we have to learn how to be confident, how to believe in ourselves, how to believe that when we make a team, we can do it, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, the key is for me to contribute to designing the model and deliver the proof of operations, and then trigger the emotions so that you feel like going for it. Thank you for the question.
If you're not about to collapse from fatigue, from not having slept for a week, Could we continue a few more minutes?
Sure. Sure.
We have a lot of people online, and maybe we could check if somebody else. But I do know that Mr. Godrej, Jamshed was online a few minutes ago, and I just wanted to tell you, Jamshed, if you're still online, Gunter is leaving right after this meeting from Mumbai, and he will be there from tonight and the whole of tomorrow. And it would be great if he could connect with you. So I'm just using a private opportunity to communicate. Could you just check if there's anybody else? Yeah.
Any more questions from the online participants? Anyone else?
No milk, no sugar. You prefer green or black? Prefer green, please.
Okay, so there's not many else. So Gunter, what I was going to ask you is, take us through a complete story. Either maybe the bakery in Johannesburg or the Terra Preta. I think the Terra Preta in Berlin is much more exciting in some ways because it can be applied, both of them can be applied by us, and maybe both of you have time, but I think it would be good to demonstrate what are the details that we have to look at in order to do that right.
Well, I leave the logistics of getting to the airport to your kind consideration.
We will get you there.
So here is the first observation, of course, is from a frustration. Let's just say it what it is. 6% of the waste in a landfill in Germany today is a diaper. And the diapers are growing, and of course they are posing health hazards, because this is an uncontrolled distribution, not just of the plastics, but the content. So our first reaction was, can we design a diaper that is 100% made from bioplastics? Because we learned from Terra Preta that in order to have very effective Terra Preta made, you need biomass, charcoal, and you need human excrements or animal excrements. And it's the fermentation of the three that creates this carbon bomb of nutrition that is called Terra Preta. It's called Terra Preta because of the Brazilian name for black soil. Thank you very much. The Brazilian name of black soil that was discovered in the Amazons were, you know, the Amazon soil is traditionally very poor in nutrition. And then they found these places where people had such a rich soil. And then, of course, the discovery came, this is Terra Preta. Then it was discovered the Vikings were using also Terra Preta. And it's even said that the prowess of the Vikings to be so good warriors is because they had enough food. Now, it's strange that they only had a 5-month farming season and they had more food available than those in the southern part of Europe who had 6-7 months of farming available. And again, it was discovered that they had exactly the same process as the Amazon cultures of combining charcoal, which they eliminated in the winter time with burning a lot of wood. They had food waste and human excrements, and they were carefully mixing and fermenting the three. So it's not composting as such, but it is really the fermentation of those three ingredients. When we learned that, we had a work with the Botanical Garden of Berlin, where we were permitted to install a few dry toilets, because we needed to verify on the spot without transportation. And now why we had to do it? Because we had no permission to transport. You can't transport human excrements through Germany at will. And obtaining the permits was very difficult. So the only solution we had was to actually have dry toilets installed at the Berlin Botanical Gardens and to do the fermentation process of the charcoal, because they had the charcoal, because they had so much biomass from their 20,000 different plants in the gardens that they had to burn it. And so we had charcoal, we had human excrements, and then we had the biomass fresh waste. 2 years of research went by, and the conclusion was that the nutrition embedded in this fermented black soil was considered by the botanical garden as the bomb of fertilizer. It was so good that they were surprised because they said, what we produce here is not available on the market. We can't buy that. So with the scientific documentation of the nutritional value of the black soil, we realized that the best growth you got was actually from fruit trees. Fruit trees have a much higher necessity of a mix of nutrition. And of course, once you get a fruit tree going, then you have fruits for decades to come. So with that research going on in parallel, we were looking at the social research, and we realized that actually just about any mom who is a first-time mother has quite quick a few reflections about, my God, I'm dumping a lot of waste. This is plastics. This is not good. And since 1 baby in 2 is getting rash on the bum, they're worried about why is this happening. So we then had a more detailed analysis of what actually a diaper is made of. And as I describe it in my book, it is just shocking what is in a diaper. I mean, we have no idea. And since diapers have become a global product where the production centers are Turkey and Indonesia, the world's biggest producers of diapers, we know that their standards for health, safety, ingredients is a bit more relaxed than the German standard. So we could, for example, identify that 96% of all diapers had chlorine, which is prohibited in Europe. You can't put chlorine anymore, but it was in there. Now, chlorine on a bum of a baby is just a no-no. Phthalates, which have been prohibited from the baby bottles. I mean, they can't put in phthalates anymore because it affects the health of the baby, is found in the diapers. Of course, with the excuse, it's only on the outside, not on the inside. And so we were finding all of these ingredients which are actually not acceptable and endangering the health of the child. So then we had Ayumi, and Ayumi, she made her first presentation at the World Congress of Ziri in Madrid, exactly 10 years ago. And she considered it an art project to be able to grow salads on your own excrements. And she demonstrated scientifically that, of course, there is no transmission of any virus, any bacteria, because the nature's cascading of nutrition blocks at every place. And that's why the terra preta needs to be fermented, because thanks to the fermentation, you have a switch in pH and you have an elimination of many of the potential pathogenic viruses and bacteria. So then we realized there was in many of these products over time a major issue with fungus. When you are actually putting on a diaper and you don't change the diaper immediately after soiling, you're creating an environment that is very conducive for fungus. As a result, there is a very interesting correlations. Now, correlations are not scientific proof, but the correlation of 2 major statistics, the incidence of fungal problems with women is being very well documented and is now associated directly to the extended use of diapers, because the diaper used to be for 9 months and then went on to 3 years. Today, the average use of a diaper in Europe for a child is 3 years and 4 months. 3 years and 4 months. That means that you're really creating an incredible environment for fungus to really settle inside your body. And second, for the boys who need to have a temperature difference between the scrotum and the body, they actually have a temperature rise of 2 degrees because the boys, when they keep on wearing their diapers, actually around the body, they have 2 degrees too high for the health of the body. So as a result, we're seeing these health issues, the chemical issues, the health issues, and that got us a good documentation together to make a proposal to the city of Berlin to do a real operation. In parallel, we had to learn how to make a diaper. And that was dramatic because everyone said, you can't make it. And I was saying, look, it's been made for 500 years, you know, piece by piece. Don't tell me. So Ayumi and her team succeeded in getting a production system in place for about 400,000 diapers with semi-automatic machines. That means 100 babies a year consume 400,000 diapers. I mean, 100 babies.
These were made from materials from Thailand. You remember what was that?
Yes, so we're using bamboo fluff, we're using hemp paper, we're using biodegradable plastics, we're using, the only thing we cannot make is the elastic. And so therefore we have an elastic over pants, and then we have the diaper on the inside. It's an inlay rather than a full diaper, because you need to have the elastic effect. So the elastics is now done with rubber bands, working very well. And then we had to do actual tests with the babies and the tests with the parents. The baby is not the problem. The baby will take anything. It's the parents. And so there was a social contract signed. And the biggest breakthrough, I think, of the work of Ayumi is on the social contract. So the parents commit to come on Saturday between 10 and 12 in the morning, and they will come with a ton of soiled diapers, and they receive a ton with clean diapers. Free. They don't pay. The diaper service is for free. Now, of course, this had amazing results because some people said, I can pay. I don't need it for free. I'm happy to pay, give them for free to someone else. But the fact that it's for free was done, as the question was asked before, to break the barrier of acceptance. Because if you pay, there is always like, no, it's for free. And the for free means that there's no reason not to do it. Then, of course, my work, now I come to my work, the rest I haven't done anything with, is how do we design a business model that there is cash coming in? And we realized that many cities around the world have a budget for replanting trees in the inner city. Actually, every city around the world is doing that today, without exception. The old trees are dying. The old trees have suffered from overpollution. There's too much concrete poured over them. They don't survive. And so we asked the city of Berlin the average price for purchasing a tree, and we fell off our chair. 38 euro for a tree planted. Now, if you have 100 babies, you have 200 parents. With 200 parents, you have, of course, 400 grandparents. That means you have a workforce of 600 people for you. And of course, very emotionally committed to this baby. Even grandparents, will be ready to go and plant a few trees because it's growing in from the baby. And as a result, there was this amazing social tissue created, Ashok, that 100 babies bring together 600 people. And if you look at the extended community, you go over 1,000 people. Now, 1,000 people in a local area is the area. You have the community, and you have the most dynamic part of the community. So what we've learned is that the discipline, of course, this is German discipline, to come in the morning. And of course, the first few weeks, everyone is talking about the baby and the birth difficulties and the rashes on the bum, and they're talking about everything together. But after a few weeks, we have now the studies that there is a major effect on the babies. I mean, can you imagine after 6 weeks doing this exchange with very motivated people? Actually, they know the names of most babies. I mean, the people who come know half of the names of the baby. 50 babies are named by those people exchanging dirty for clean diapers. And what we have learned from the psychologists is when a baby gets greeted by 50 different adults with different voices speaking nice, it develops, security, comfort, becomes a person of the world. Fortunately, during the COVID, we weren't blocked all the time. It was made difficult, but not impossible, because it was always outdoors. We were always outdoors, and there was always social distancing and all of that that was required. So then we had to go through the regulatory issues, because transport was an issue. So we had to limit the number of babies, because the truck by law in Berlin could not have more to carry than 1.5 tons. So we were limited by these regulations. And of course, you can't say, I'm going to change the regulations now. So then at first we thought the Terra according to the scientists, could be produced in 6 months. Then the regulators said, no, it has to be 1 year. So we had to adjust 1 year. After 1 year, we could then finally start doing the tests with the tree growths, and the tree growths were fantastic. Then we could mobilize the parents to do tree planting weekends in the spring and in the fall, and that worked very well. So I'm going through the process that actually I'm summarizing excessively, Ashok, but it's about 200 people involved over 10 years' time.
There was some multinationals who were also putting money into it. I remember Crook said others were supporting this. In addition to the municipality, or was that?
The biggest support has come through the university, the Technical University of Berlin, TU Berlin. They've been very important on the research side, and which is very expensive and time consuming. PhD studies have been done. So there was a good set of research. The botanical gardens helped, but in the end of the day, money from the big guys never came through. Promised, but never came through. There has been donations, but it's been very much self-funded. So the fruits, is available for free to anyone who can pick it up. Now, here's a pen. I mean, in the book, I describe in the epilogue of the book the numbers, but the numbers are shocking. 100 babies. No? Okay. I was standing in front of it, perhaps. I'm a lefty, so I'm going over my text before you can see it. So 100 babies produce 1,000 kilograms per year. That's not only the excrement, that is the excrement, the diaper, the food waste, all of that. That means 100 babies is 100 tons. Wow, that's a lot. 100 tons, that gives you actually sufficient for one tree to grow. It needs 1 kilogram. So 100 babies produce enough material for 100,000 trees. 100 babies, 100,000 trees, which over 10 years will start producing 25 kg of fruits per tree. That means we have 2,500 tons of fruits per year from 100 babies for the next 50 years. I mean, this is pretty regenerated, huh? And this is why the subtitle of the book is Our 100 Babies Change the Future of the Earth. Because you do that with 100. Now Berlin, every year are born 110,000 babies. Now you add the numbers, Berlin just run out of space for planting trees. There's no space in Berlin to plant so many trees.
Well, I saw a lot of them on the streets, on the street.
Yes, and we've done on all the streets already. But the beauty is that now you're attacking the nutrition of the babies. Instead of this pre-cooked food, you can have fruits. And then there is a choice of the botanical garden comes in again. The botanical garden. And the botanical garden will give us the names of the fruits that they know will grow in Berlin with harvesting throughout 12 months. And all of a sudden, we have a food security program. We have a health program for children. We bring biodiversity back to the city. You know, that's what the diaper is doing. And so, to me, this is really what we are about to do. This is the revolution. It's 100 diapers, huh? It's 100 kids. But the army behind it, and that's what I think is very important, is you're looking at 600 family members direct, at least 1,000 indirect. So to do 100,000 trees with 1,000 people is over the year, you're planting 100 trees. Now, as a family, planting 100 trees over a year, is that a challenge? No, it's not a challenge. It's perfectly feasible. So we've changed the logic of creating social tissue that we have lost with this cell phone, smartphone, internet, Netflix. We've lost completely the social tissue. And all of a sudden, because the most emotional moment, I think, for many families is when the baby is born. And that's when everyone comes together. I mean, there are two moments you see everyone in the family. The baby is born and the granddad dies. I mean, that's when everyone gets together. So now you're taking that opportunity when the family gets together to celebrate new life. You're celebrating. And what do? Go and plant trees. And the planting of a tree has already become a kind of a cultural event. You know, we like to go and plant a tree.
Well, thank you, Gunter, because that story really brings together the fundamentals of what we're talking about in the blue economy. We're basically mobilizing large numbers of resources, physical, biological, social, and putting them together in a way that you create something huge out of nothing, out of what was considered to be nothing. So I think this is something that we can explain. We have about 10 minutes for you to make it to the airport on time. Maybe a quick thing on the bakery. I thought the last time you explained it, how many of you were here when we heard about the Johannesburg bakery? Only Pat and Arun. I think they would like that. If we could just give them a quick overview of that. Thanks.
So again, the same methodological approach is let's start from the issue. What's the issue at stake? The issue at stake is that the wheat and the grains that we're harvesting today don't have the nutrition anymore they used to have 50 years ago. Because we have mined the soils. The soils just don't have it anymore. And since we're not replenishing the soils, we're continuously suffering from this dramatic loss of topsoil with the minerals in it, with the trace minerals in particular. And so therefore we have lost this opportunity. And so we were thinking, what can we do? And it was Mexico. When I was teaching at the Tec de Monterrey, the Monterrey Institute of Technology, I had students who came to challenge me on avocado seeds. And out of that challenge on the avocado seeds came the conclusion that we should mix avocado seeds minus the oil into the bread. So when the mayor of Johannesburg asked me to look at initiatives that we could alleviate poverty and malnutrition, because you can generate jobs, but the key is malnutrition, realizing that so many of the kids are undernourished with this bread that looks like sponges. You know, we have this industrial bread that is a sponge, that is bread, but is not nutrition. And so we went through the initiative of looking at the sources for seeds. And of course, north of Johannesburg, you have Limpopo. And in Limpopo, you have its fruit gardens. I mean, you know, in South Africa, if some of you have been there, you have the garden route. I mean, you have the garden route, they have everything, but the whole logic of the apples, the pears, the grapes, also the mango, the avocados, everything is just what the world wants and not what we have. So therefore, we started with the avocado seeds because we knew that, but then we were also exposed to the mango seeds. And the goal was not to have one big central factory. The goal was to have a series of small production units. So to empower the farmers to learn how to press a seed, to really dry the seed, because you need to go to about 6% humidity, and then to grind it very fine so you don't have this fibrous effect, but you really have a powder effect. And then there were already in with Wendy Luhabe, you remember her, Ashok, who has been funding small bakeries. Then we were looking at how can we turn the bakery into more than just being a bakery. Again, the same interest in creating social tissue. How can we create community? Because when you're in an environment that sounds like so undernourished, but also with so much poverty and therefore so much violence, we felt that there was a need to create a place where you can have the bread baked quasi-publicly. So the dough is prepared in a central place, but is delivered to local places, very much along the line what you have today in supermarkets. Some of the supermarkets, you have what is called oven fresh bread. Oven fresh basically means recently unfrozen bread. I mean, that's what it means. So we were able to deliver the fresh one, ready mixed, but we put it into a oven that was solar powered. And that solar power development was again done by the Technical University of Berlin. So we had a team that got together and designed a way to create an oven that had the heat. Now, when you have the heat, you can create the bread, but if you don't separate it out in a back room, but you have it in a public place, particularly in moments like now in the winter time when it's cold, everyone comes together because you have a warm oven. And then you promote the bread eating because people come for the warmth, and then of course they get the bread, and then the bread is at the high nutrition, then they buy the bread and they go home. And we eliminated all the transport and all the packaging, which is as bread used to be. When bread has just come out of the oven, you can't put it into a pack because you're destroying the bread. The bread will be tasteless if you take it warm out of the oven into a bag. It has to be open. That's why there was never any packaging for bread until they started shipping it and doing it frozen as they do it today. So that process was all on track until Parks Tau lost the election, was booted out, and the DA that came in, that is not DA Development Alternatives, that is the DA political party of South Africa, stopped the whole program, and we never went ahead. So this is our frustration, Ashok. But the bread making, or rather said the tortilla making, has fully developed in Mexico. It's now one of the standards in Mexico.
Also getting material from the vegetable markets and from the
Yes, but that was to do the biogas production. So we had a separate initiative on the biogas production, but that was in the cluster, but not directly related. We were getting energy from that, that's true. And that was at the Johannesburg Fresh Market.
but there was some nutritional value in that.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is a shock, but it never went to to market. So that's why I'm not mentioning it now. That was an idea that didn't get to market because of the politics that shifted.
Coming from beer nowadays.
Well, in Johannesburg, we don't use the beer. In Johannesburg, we only use the fruit waste, the seeds, avocado seeds.
Of the ready made, right?
Yes, that was not implemented in South Africa. That was done in Germany. That was done in Sweden. That was done in Colombia, but not in South Africa. So I'm just focusing here on the bread project of South Africa.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone, both online and in this room, for having taken part in this. You can see that there are many things that we could be thinking of and doing very, very quickly, provided we make our commitments to doing that. The Blue Book, all of you know, is of course available in hardcover. The diaper story I have on PDF, and if somebody's interested, I can be certainly hand it over to them. It's not yet in print, but it will be shortly. And we ought to maybe hook up with Gunter every now and then on a Saturday meeting and have a few more chats like this. I hope you found it mind expanding and exciting, as I did. I heard these stories many times, but I find them really truly amazing. And I just hope that DA can be a how would you say, an implementer of many of these. We would like to do that. Keep us in mind on your Blue Campus in Bombay tomorrow. We have to get you to the airport in about half an hour, so I think that's doable. And I really want to thank you on behalf of everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you. Thank you. So then,